talk about today is that there are some ideas that are so scary and so dangerous that they should not be allowed to be spoken. Now, that's not the perspective of most leaders in public office today. We have a First Amendment, which I'll talk about today, as a protection for free speech. But there are places in this world that would say that there are some ideas that are so scary and so problematic that they should not be spoken. They should definitely not be published or ever put on the air in broadcast media. Okay? So, what I want you to write about is this. Are there ideas on this campus that are so scary and so dangerous that they should not be spoken and should not be broadcast and should not be put into print media? Okay?
Are we answering from our point of view?
This is your point. No, there is no right answer. This is your perspective. What are those ideas? And if you want to be specific, here's those ideas. You can actually write those down. But the idea is, are there such ideas? And I'm actually asking you a yes or no question, which is dangerous. I shouldn't do that. But if you would go into some explanation of why are they so scary? And do you feel like they are being shut down on this campus? Okay. Let me repeat what we're doing. Okay. Are there ideas on this campus that would be considered so dangerous, so culturally problematic, that they should not be uttered? We shouldn't speak about them. We should not ever put them into media. They should just be kept in hiding, especially on days like today when we have visitors. Right? There are parents and prospective students wandering among our midst. They might even be at the door as we speak, listening, and maybe we should, put on the visit weekend face and everything's good, and please come and be here. Right? Okay, so write down your perspective on that. Let's talk about free speech, free press, and the painful stories that if we bring them to the table, we could be in a world of hurt. Okay? The picture you see on the screen is of a Chinese soldier who does not like the press, especially American press. So the question becomes, what's really going on in the world if all we get is the official version? Okay? Imagine what you would feel like if you didn't have access to the internet, you didn't have access to any other information except what was on this campus. You would feel very cut off and isolated. So what we're seeing is that the world, right now, especially the Arab world, is agitating for freedom. And that freedom comes from an American model of First Amendment right to information. Okay? I am very fond of telling my students in the journalism department that there is no such thing as a right to know. There is a privilege of knowing information. But if you ever hear people from other schools or hear professional journalists say the people have a right to know, be nice to them. Don't be unkind about this. But you might just say, where'd you get that? Because it's not in the Constitution. And if they really know their history, that right to know phrase came from the Associated Press in the 1940s in a speech talking about press freedom. There is no right to know. There's a privilege for knowing, And that privilege, it has to be earned in a cultural setting. And there are some places where it won't be earned, and people, like in Egypt, just say, okay, enough. I've been patient too long. We're taking over, and we want freedom of the press. Okay? If you don't like it, get out of our way, because you're going to get hurt. We want freedom now. That's happening. The question becomes, when they get their freedom, what are they going to do with it? We'll see. That's an open question. Okay? The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. 45 words, 5 freedoms. Okay? Everybody hold your hand up. 5. Okay? Your thumb, is the freedom of religion. Second freedom, freedom of speech. Third freedom, press. Fourth freedom, peaceable assembly. Fifth freedom, redress of grievances. 5 different freedoms. Notice that the First Amendment begins with a reference to freedom of religion. The U.S. Constitution guarantees your right to express yourself in your faith. Now, there are lawyers who have been very active in the last couple of generations who have put the emphasis on this word right here, establishment. You will not pray in public schools because that is an establishment. Don't be getting down in the end zone. That's prayer. We will ding you. This is a state-run school. So we don't establish religion. What very shrewd evangelical lawyers, Catholic lawyers, Christian lawyers have said is, excuse me, Judge, can I just ask you one thing? The Constitution says that you're not supposed to prohibit the free exercise of religion. So if the football player, he just scored a touchdown, he wants to get down and just, do one of these. Would that be free exercise? Is that okay to do that? And many judges have said, you know what? Yes, it's free exercise. Case dismissed. So, just so you see that, the Constitution does include both. ACLU likes this. Christian Legal Society likes this. Okay. So what we're talking about today is freedom of speech and freedom of press. Saying what I want to say in a column, in an article, in a photo, in a video clip. Okay? This is the United States Constitution. It's not the Egyptian Constitution, certainly not the Constitution of Saudi Arabia or countries that don't believe in this. Okay? Don't be surprised by that. Democracy is not a biblical mandate. Democracy is a messy experiment that may or may not be useful in every society. Kind of works here, but if you talk to political scientists, they'll actually say what we've got really isn't a pure democracy because it's so messy. So that's the First Amendment. Here are some perspectives on democracy from 3 different scholars. James Russell Lowell, who was a statesman and educator, said this: democracy is that form of society, no matter what its political classification, in which every man has a chance and knows it. So if this was a pure democracy, we could say to any little kid coming out of the elementary school down the street, you could be president someday. You. Everybody has a right. And there's a sense in which we've kind of felt that in this country. Barack Obama comes from some interesting roots and background, and he's not the cookie cutter, I can trace my lineage back on the Mayflower to Western Europe. He's different. He is the president. So that says something about maybe everybody has a chance. Walter Lippmann, who was a Jewish, I'll just mention that in passing, his Jewishness shaped his perspectives on freedom. He was discriminated against seriously in his years at Harvard. Because he was Jewish, he wasn't allowed to join the newspaper staff, for instance. Sorry, only Protestants. Maybe Catholics, but definitely no Jews. Sorry, Walter. He said, a democratic society might be defined as one in which the majority is always prepared to put down a revolutionary minority. And that is true. That's true. It's happening all over the world. Bertrand Russell said, great quote, I love this. If one man offers you democracy and another offers you a bag of grain, food, at what stage of starvation will you prefer the grain to the vote? And they would ask this of people in Marxist countries. They would say, wouldn't you rather have democracy? And they would say, you know what? I'm hungry. And the Marxists give me food. And they help build my house. They give me shelter. They educate my children. So, yeah, I mean, conceptually, democracy sounds nice, but what about my family? Tough call. Is democracy the answer? I don't know. It's tough. There's no easy way to answer that in different parts of the world. John Milton, very famous theorist, said that difficult truths are things we should bring to the table. And that picture up on the screen is my weak attempt to show you a picture of a table with lots of voices around the table. And John Milton's theory was that when everybody speaks, eventually you come up with the truth. The key is letting everybody speak. Here's his quote from Areopagitica. Though all the winds of doctrine were let loose to play upon the earth, so truth be in the field. We do ingloriously by licensing and prohibiting to misdoubt her strength. Let her and falsehood grapple. Whoever knew truth put to the worse in a free and open encounter. Truth, with a capital T, has the power to overcome deception and lies, half-truth. The truth will win, John Milton said. The problem is that this table, not everybody gets invited because we think some people are too scary. Let me ask you about this one. And I tend to fixate on this one because it's just, anyway, I'll explain in a minute. In the discussion about women's place in society, we talked about the fact that there aren't enough women faculty on this campus, and there are not enough women faculty of color on this campus to help us advance understanding of diversity for you students. The ratio here is 60-40 to women to men. In some majors, it's like 70-30, 80-20 women to men. So why aren't there more women on the campus? So in the table, sitting around the table talking about that, how about this voice? There's a guy named Larry Flint, who is the publisher of a magazine called Hustler. It's a pornographic magazine. And Larry Flint was interviewed on an NPR show called Fresh Air out of Boston. And Terry Gross, the interviewer, is repulsed by this guy. She just finds him disgusting. But she said, I'm going to interview this guy because I want the world to see how gross, Terry Gross, he is. And so they will be so repulsed, they will stay away from him. So she asked Larry Flint how the pictures he puts in his magazine of women, pornographic images of women, how are they empowering women in this country? And he said, they're a celebration of beauty. Why are we so messed up about the human form? It's nudes in the art gallery. What are you worried about? Is that a voice we want at the table? That's the question. At Biola University, we have certain people we invite to our table because we are of the perspective that if you invite certain voices to the table, it's going to skew the whole conversation. I don't know. I'm not sure I'd want Larry Flint at my table. But Terry Gross had that perspective. She said, I'm going to give this guy the microphone. And it'll turn people away. But she got mail. People said, what were you thinking? Don't put him on the air. Don't give him the voice. You want the plant to hear his views? And they were saying, big mistake. So that's the tough call. Do you invite all voices to the table, or do you select who gets to talk? John Moulton says, let everybody speak. Now, I want to apply this to the Falun Gong. A little background, your chapter talks about this. In China, as we've been talking about, freedom of the press is not allowed. And freedom of religion is not allowed either, because religion is the opiate of the masses and it messes with people's minds, and they need to focus on the state, which is essentially their deity. The Falun Gong is a movement of spiritual reflection. It is completely nonviolent, but the state government in China said this movement needs to stop, and we will stop this movement by any means possible. So this is a video clip. I'm not going to show you the whole thing because they actually show you the torture that the government did to people. So I'm going to stop before I show you that stuff. But just to give you a little perspective on this kind of repression that happened. If you want to, if you're okay with this kind of thing, you can look it up yourself. Falun Gong. You'll find lots of stuff on YouTube about it. But I just wanted you to see this. Okay. The torture, they systematically show all the torture methods. Okay, we don't need that today. But what you see is the government says this is not allowed. And when they demonstrated and said, we believe we have the right to share this with the people, the government responded by saying, no, you don't. And they sent in the troops, and there was violence against these demonstrators. Now, China Press, your chapter talks about a media operation located, headquartered in New York. It's actually all over the country in bureaus. One of them's here in LA. The China Press took on the perspective of the government and said Falun Dafa, Falun Gong, is brainwashing, and it's actually responsible for people's deaths. And the Falun Gong hired attorneys to sue China Press. and they filed a libel lawsuit. Those of you who are not in the journalism major, you don't know this. Those of you who are in the major, just bear with me with a quick, as I just give some background. Libel is a form of defamation, defaming. It's not against the law to defame someone, especially if it's true. So, KTLA tonight may have another piece about Lindsay Lohan. Yet another piece about what Lindsay Lohan has done to get herself in trouble. That news coverage defames Lindsay Lohan, makes her look bad in the eyes of the public. But because it's true, it's not actionable in court as defamation. It will be thrown out summarily because it's true reporting. So China Press was sued for libel, and it accused, Falun Gong accused China Press of inciting violence. It said their reputation had been damaged, and they sought to stop the continuing coverage. The response in court was this. They went back to a court case where the US Supreme Court ruled that there is no such thing as a false idea. There is no such thing as a false idea. There's false facts. Facts can be verified as being true or false. An idea is just an idea. I have an idea about how I can create a better smart car. There's nothing true or false about that. It's just an idea. In this case, what they said was the perspective of China Press can't be shut down in advance of coverage. And they said if the coverage is true, it has to be allowed. Because in our society, even people who say bad stuff about us, especially if we're public officials or public figures, it holds us accountable. We don't like it. It's like gnats around us, but it's part of the price of being a public figure or public official. So what this chapter is saying is that in this country, the First Amendment gives us this table for talking about ideas that are uncomfortable. And the courts are saying we have to protect that. But what I want you to see is that this chapter is about a spiritual way of thinking that Falun Gong is about. This could have been about Christianity. What if somebody said, okay, you know what, I've had it with the fish. KFSH, I'm going to file a lawsuit against Christian radio because it is so offensive to me. They're talking about Jesus all the time and God, and enough. I want all Christian radio stations shut down in this country because it's forcing religion on me, and it's a public airwave, and they have an FCC license, Federal Communications Commission. My taxes are paying for that. Enough with that. Shut them down. That lawsuit or that initiative would fail because of what the courts have said about the importance of differing ideas. So, I just mentioned in passing, that is a temporary thing. And I'm not creating conspiracy theories, but there are people who are saying that this institution, where you are sitting right now, schools like us are on the bubble. Because this is a nation that believes in the importance of all perspectives in the classroom. And the 1964 U.S. Civil Rights Act says that no person in this country hired to work in any place of employment can be discriminated against based on their gender or their race. The 1964 U.S. Civil Rights Act protects that freedom of all people to be hired. Okay? What this institution, among all other Christian institutions, is waiting for is the day when someone in Congress will introduce sexual preference into the 1964 U.S. Civil Rights Act. On that day, this institution will have a very difficult decision to make. Will we comply with that, or will we choose to do something else? Very difficult decision. We'll see. Pray for Biola and schools like us, because we live in an environment where people look at us with suspicion.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.